Friends, today I would be giving an account on syndrome of inappropriate secretion of ADH and vasopressin escape. This is also known as SIADH. It's one of the important renal disorder in which the ADH levels go high and leads to hyponatremia and subsequent pathophysiology. SIADH is also known as a Schwarz-Bartter syndrome because they were reported by Schwarz and Bartter for the first time. It is characterized by excessive release of unregulated quantities of ADH that leads to hyponatremia, secondary to the retention of water. Normally, ADH is responsible for the reabsorption of water from the collecting duct, involving V2 receptors which are expressed on the collecting duct, and these V2 receptors in turn open up the aquaporin 2 channels involving cyclic AMP mediated mechanism. The reabsorption of water in the collecting duct is dependent upon the medullary osmotic gradient. In SIADH, high ADH levels are seen. Hence, there would be more and more water reabsorption. This further dilutes the plasma. That means the electrolytes present in the electrolytes or other constituents present in the plasma get diluted, what is called a process of hemodilution. In this hemodilution, the sodium levels become very low or low. Of course, other electrolytes, other constituents also go low because sodium is at higher concentration. It would go much that relatively it is the drop is greater with the sodium. The causes of SIADH include those who are present inside or generate because of the internal causes within the body or because of the external administration of ADH for some therapeutic point of view, or where there is no cause, that is idiopathic. We go a little bit more regarding this etiology. The endogenous causes are further divided into 4 types, broadly 4 types. One, the excess amount of ADH secretion is unrelated to the osmotic plasma osmolality, and this type of condition is known as a non-osmotic release of ADH or eutopic release of ADH. So that means normally hyperosmolality of the plasma stimulates the osmoreceptors located in the hypothalamus, which in turn activate the paraventricular and supraoptic nuclei of the hypothalamus to release ADH from in the posterior pituitary through the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. So now here it is this non-osmotic stimulation, that is it is nothing to do with those osmoreceptors. So there are 2 main causes for such thing. One is a cerebral cause, the second is a pulmonary cause. The cerebral causes are include the cerebral edema, meningitis, cerebrovascular accidents, and so on. All those cerebrovascular things, they are this thing. This is known as a cerebral salt wasting disorder. Here, what happens? The cerebral edema or the meningitis or the lesions in the cerebrum, they would stimulate the release of ADH, and they activate. So that is independent of this osmoreceptor regulation. In the second case, the pulmonary salt wasting disorders. In this case, what happens? The lung disorders, especially the pulmonary edema, pulmonary consolidation, pneumonia, ARDS, or any diseases with a pulmonary congestion, or any of these things would produce a thing which increase the ADH secretion. We don't know the exact cause of this increase in ADH. Anyway, it is we see the ADH increase in these conditions. This is about a non-osmotic or eutopic factors. Then comes the ectopic factors. So that means there are ADH secreting malignant tumors, and these ADH secreting tumors, they would generate large amount of they would release a large amount of ADH into the circulation, and that would produce the SIADH. So such tumors are seen from the lungs, from the pancreas, and from the lymphoid tissue. So here there is a definite source of ADH because of this ectopic points. Then in the third case, where these two, the ADH secretion may be normal, but the renal kidney tissue is super sensitive to the ADH. That means increased sensitivity of the collecting ducts to the ADH action. So that may be responsible because of the increased V2R receptors, that is the V2 receptors, or increased expression of the aquaporin 2 channels, or because of the greater expression of the signaling pathways. That means adenylate cyclase, cyclic AMP, protein kinase C, all the signaling pathways involved in this, they are expressed upregulated, and they may produce that super sensitivity. Then that is the causes present in the kidney. Fourth thing is the gene mutations. This gene mutation is coming from the mutation of the synthesis of the ADH. ADH is secreted as a molecule, as a pre-propresophysin molecule, a large molecular compound, and this from this large molecular compound, that is around 160 or 158 amino acid residues, and now this ADH is only a nonapeptide, that is only 9 amino acid residues. There is a mutation of this prepropresophysin molecule, and that is released excessively, and that results in SIADH. That is for all the endogenous causes. Now, looking at the exogenous causes, I have already mentioned, because of the administration of the ADH analogs, that would increase the ADH concentration. And the idiopathic causes, where we don't know the exact cause. What are the manifestations of the SIADH? Clinically, SIADH patients present with a typical or a classically as hyponatremia. Here is a patient, he comes with a hyponatremia. And now this hyponatremia, when you analyzed, you will see that there is an increased osmolarity. That means there is a greater concentration of urine. So that means the increased osmolarity of the urine, that is more than 100 milliosmoles. At the same time, you see in this condition of hyponatremia, there is a decreased plasma osmolarity. So the decreased plasma osmolarity and increased urine osmolarity, these two things are with hyponatremia are in favor of the SIADH. And now the fourth point is urine sodium level is more. though there is hyponatremia there, but the urine sodium low is greater. So that means there is a excretion of the sodium in the urine. This is quite contradictory to what is required for the body. And in these circumstances, there is no change in the plasma volume or the blood volume. These are some of the things. There are no changes in the volume, blood volume, but you will see hyponatremia, decreased plasma osmolality, and high concentrated urine, and high levels of sodium in the urine. These are these manifestations, or clinically we can diagnose SIADH. Symptoms of the ADH are usually mild in most of the cases, but in severe cases, they manifest with a cerebral edema, and the cerebral edema further results in the neurological dysfunctions, and ultimately, in case where the sodium levels go too low, they may result in a respiratory arrest and death. Here in this chart, we try to see the signs and symptoms of SIADH in reference to the levels of the sodium in the blood or plasma. So normally the sodium level is 135 to 145 milliequivalents per liter, and that's what I have shown here, 135 to 145 milliequivalents. It's normal. So when the sodium concentration falls below 125 milliequivalents, so there is a acute cerebral edema, which results in apathy or behavioral changes, disinterest of the individual, not lassitude, and then not participating in any of the things. Then he feels weak. There's a weakness, generalized weakness, and he feels headache because of the cerebral edema, headache, and even a lightheadedness. And he will feel nausea and vomiting as the sodium levels falls below 125, or when they reach up to 115 or so. When they reach around 115 or lower, the consciousness of the individual is altered. He goes into delirium, and then he goes into coma. So then there would be seizures there. That means there are convulsions, generalized convulsions may appear. Then ultimately, when it falls much below, respiratory arrest and death. So that means the sodium levels that determine the when it falls below 115, the patient becomes critical. So now let us consider what is this hyponatremia and SIADH, because hyponatremia is the main thing. Now let us understand that ADH, antidiuretic hormone, it is a hormone reabsorbs water from the collecting duct. So that means a water retaining hormone, and by doing so it dilutes the plasma. By diluting the plasma, the sodium levels fall. That is a dilutional hyponatremia. And because of the water reabsorption, the plasma volume is expanded, and the expansion of the plasma volume increases the stretch on the atria and the heart. That will produce the ANP, a hormone secreted from the heart. That's the atrial natriuretic peptide. This atrial natriuretic peptide is secreted from the heart, now reaches the collecting duct via the circulation, and it will result in sodium loss from the collecting duct. So that means it does not favor the sodium, it will favor the sodium excretion in the urine. And sodium excretion is associated with water movement. So that means they go hand in hand. Sodium and water move out in the urine. Thus, they will try to uh, eliminate the excess, or there are no excess amount of sodium, eliminate the sodium. So now, by doing so, that will only try to compensate or balance the volume expansion. Now, ANP is very uh, particular for volume expansion, so that will try to diminish or balance the volume expansion resulted from the water retention created by the ADH. So now this volume expansion, that is why in ADH patients they will be euvolumic and do not exhibit any signs of edema, because there is no extra fluid there. Further, what happens? The aldosterone is remains silent. Aldosterone is not activated. Here I have used the word inhibited. Rather, it is better that it is not activated, because ANP inhibits the aldosterone secretion from the adrenal cortex. In addition, because of the plasma dilution, the potassium concentration of the plasma falls, and the low potassium, usually the high potassium stimulates the aldosterone secretion from the adrenal cortex. So that is again, do not stimulate the adrenal cortex. Further, what is happening? The blood pressure is either even remaining same or little higher, because there is more amount of ADH. ADH produces the pressure response. The blood pressure is raised, and the volume is also, plasma volume is also increased, and the ADH per se, vasopressin, which produces that elevates the blood pressure. So now elevation of the blood pressure do not favor or do not activate renin angiotensin aldosterone mechanism. So that itself is a point. That means a renin angiotensin system is not activated. Angiotensin 2 regulates or is a stimulant for aldosterone secretion. Now, because the blood pressure is high, it is associated with baroreceptor activation, and that decreases the sympathetic activity. These factors either independently, this ANP inhibits the potassium concentration, the increased blood pressure, and decreased sympathetic activity, do not stimulate aldosterone. Aldosterone is a hormone which is necessary for the sodium reabsorption from the distal nephron, basically distal nephron, that is a distal convoluted tubule and collecting that. And now sodium is not reabsorbed. If sodium is not reabsorbed, water is also not water is that means sodium and water are passed through the tubular fluid, and then eliminated as a urine. So that means no reabsorption of sodium. So that further aggravates the hyponatremic status. Now look these points in this cartoon here, which I have made. So we can start with this cartoon. Now the SIADH, it is the big start point, wherein we have a large amount of ADH coming from any of the sources, either endogenous or exogenous, or the idiopathic causes, whatever may be the cause. The ADH is there. Now that is a condition of SIADH. Now what happens? The ADH activates the collecting duct that stimulate the V2 receptors, cyclic AMP, phosphokinase C, and then opens the aquaporin 2 channels, and that allows the water reabsorption from the medullary interstitium and then to the blood. That is medullary interstitium is a determining, the osmotic concentration of the medullary interstitium is a determining factor for water reabsorption. Water is reabsorbed, and once the water is reabsorbed, it enters the plasma, and the plasma water increases relatively, and once the plasma water is increased, the plasma sodium concentration falls, decreases. Now to tell you here, this water reabsorption induced by ADH is independent of any other factors, that is sodium or other electrolytes. So that means it is a free water reabsorption. It is not related with any electrolytes. Now, because of the volume expansion, the atrial stretch is there. This atrial stretch activates the ANP production, atrial natriuretic peptide production from the heart and the atria. Now, what it does, the atrial natriuretic peptide, it will activate the CD to excrete sodium and water. That means sodium and water is excreted in the urine. That means here it is the sodium and water excretion. So that means it eliminates, or it takes away the sodium, and once the sodium is going out, along with the sodium, water goes out. So water excretion goes. So now what happens here? It has increased the plasma volume. Now the water is excreted, so it has decreased the plasma volume. There is a balance, thus there is no volume change. Net volume change is nearly not there. It's not there. So now what happened? Because of the sodium excretion, this leads to further fall in sodium. This is a level 2. The first level is dilution. The second level is the ANP, which is eliminating sodium. Though there is a hyponatremia, eliminating sodium further decreases the sodium level. Okay, so now consider one more point. What is happening here because of this plasma dilution? So plasma dilution, and because of ANP, so you see the aldosterone is not activated because ANP suppresses the aldosterone secretion. Plasma potassium level falls, that will not activate the aldosterone secretion. The blood pressure increases because of the atrial stretch, because of the antidiuretic hormone, the vasopressin action. The blood pressure increases, and the increased blood pressure do not activate the renin-angiotensin system that will regulate the aldosterone. Thus, the aldosterone is not activated. Further, because of the increased blood pressure, so there is a decreased sympathetic activity via that baroreceptor function. So all these things put together, what happens? They will not stimulate the kidney or distal nephron to reabsorb sodium and water, sodium from the distal nephron. So if the sodium is not reabsorbed, the sodium is eliminated in the urine. Once the sodium is eliminated in the urine, that means the sodium loss. So that means sodium is excreted, and sodium cannot go alone, it always goes with the water. So this further decreases the sodium level in the third count. So one count is a dilution, the second count is a ANP effect, third count is the aldosterone non-participation. These all lead to plasma sodium level. Now, what happens? Why I am concentrating on the plasma sodium level. Now, plasma sodium level, when it reaches to a critical point, so then suddenly there is a conflict between two regulatory homeostatic mechanisms. One is a water balance, water homeostasis, another is the sodium homeostasis. Now, the collecting ducts have to balance between these two. Now what happens? Suddenly the sodium balance becomes more important for the survival of the individual. The water balance is less important, so that sodium balance takes care. So that means water balance is suppressed. So this is the condition that produces the ADH escape or vasopressin escape. So that is a point to reach is the critical plasma sodium level. Now, we have evidences to indicate that in the collecting duct there are decreased V2 receptors in patients with ADH escape or vasopressin escape, or decreased aquaporin 2 channels in CD or in collecting duct, or a decreased expression of the signaling molecules, that cyclic AMP, adenylate cyclase, or phosphocrinase C. These whatever the down regulating signaling molecules, they are also decreased, down regulated. So these evidences are present. Thus, that would lead to a point where in ADH is not able to produce or not able to absorb water from the distal or the collecting duct. If the water is not reabsorbed, I just reconstruct this or just reverse the story again. If the water is not absorbed, the plasma water level is not altered. So no, the sodium balance is, that means there is no dilutional effect. So now the stretch is diminished, and if the stretch is diminished, no activation of ENP, no elimination of sodium, or no activation of aldosterone. Thus, the sodium balance is returned back, or trying to um balance whatever has happened. This is all about vasopressin escape. Now, I'm just narrating whatever I have said in that cartoon. Now I am summarizing those factors. Vasopressin escape is a phenomena of non-responsiveness of collecting duct to the high concentrations of ADH in SIADH. At some critical stage of this syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion, plasma sodium levels fall so low because of the dilution, because of the atrial natriuretic peptide action, or because of the non-participation of the aldosterone. These are the three things which are who are participating in the culprits for a low sodium level. Now, at this point, this critical stage, the CD fails to respond to the high levels of ADH, and this is attributed to the maintenance of sodium. Extracellular sodium is far more important than the maintenance of the water balance. Now, to summarize, the vasopressin escape is the failure of CD to respond to the high levels of ADH, and it is due to decreased or downregulation of the V2 receptors, aquaporin 2 channels, or signaling molecules related to the cyclic AMP, brought about by chronic overstimulation of a collecting duct by ADH and subsequent effects. The escape is a protective homeostatic mechanism. This is a protective mechanism and precisely allows the sodium level to be maintained. So that means sodium balance is regulated. So that means it allows the plasma sodium to stabilize and may go higher. But the exact trigger that induce this escape is not known. What makes these CD cells, the collecting duct cells, not down regulation of these V2 receptors or aquaporin 2 channels or the signaling molecules, we do not know. Probably the some of those homeostatic regulatory mechanisms may be working. Other independent factors, but in such situation, when a patient is having other factors like reduced sodium intake, or he is subjected to diuretic therapy where the sodium loss is taking place, sodium and water loss is taking place, and because of the GIT loss, as happens in case of a diarrhea and vomiting, so which will further the hyponatremic status. And if it aggravates the hyponatremic status, now the vasopressin scheme sets in, or it may produce the severe abnormalities, and the condition may worsen. These are the points one has to consider. So vasopressin escape, one has to consider when you have a hyponatremic patient and with a decreased plasma osmolality and increased urinary sodium and urinary concentration. Now, these are the key words for self-evaluation: vasopressin, ADH or arginine vasopressin, post-reputatory, vasopressin receptors, aquaporins, water reabsorption, aldosterone regulation, hyponatremia, now ADH regulation, and eutopic ADH secretion. I mentioned about that, non-osmolar ADH secretion, SIADH, vasopressin escape, cerebral salt wasting, pulmonary salt wasting, and ADH secreting tumors. These are, I think I covered all of them in one point or the other. Uh, I have I will deal in my next class about the aldosterone escape, another important aspect about sodium regulation. That is why that is interesting. We will deal with that. And the current topic I have referred these books: the guidance textbook of physiology, Ganong's review of medical physiology, Samson Wright's applied physiology, and this review article from S. Posto et al. So, which was published in Nephron Clinical Practice, is of it gives a lot of information about SIADH and the vasopressin escape. Thank you very much.